This is the second of 2 lessons on adding code to your Android apps, and we'll pick up our analysis back in our Rating Bar 1 Java code. Line 40 gets the text view of the rating text field in the layout. Lines 44 and 45 set variables for 2 rating bars from the layout. Lines 48 and 49 set on rating bar change listeners for Rating Bar 1 and Rating Bar 2. Let's expand this out. Line 52 declares the onRatingChanged method that's called when a rating bar is changed. This call is built into the interface we implemented in line 29. Lines 53 through 71 set the text and rating bar in the lower part of the display, here. So we may not be interested in this code for now. What this points out is that you don't have to analyze every line of a sample app to use pieces of it. Now let's look at the Java source code for our new project. In the source folder of our first app project enhancement, we'll open the main activity. I'll point out the new code and explain my logic for including it. Line 10 defines our main activity, which now implements the onRatingBarChange listener interface. Notice that in lines 7 and 8, we've imported the rating bar and onRatingBarChange listener classes. Lines 14, 15, and 18 are unchanged from our original app. They declare the onCreate method and initialize our display. Line 21 is a statement that's been added. It sets up a listener for our rating bar. It was taken from the Rating Bar 1 Java from line 48. In this statement, in our new app, we had to change the lowercase b to an uppercase b to match the ID in our new XML here. Line 25 is also new. It declares our onRatingChanged method that'll be invoked when a rating bar is changed, and it was taken directly and unchanged from the Rating Bar 1 demo. And if we hover over the method name, we can look at the parameters. Rating bar is the name of the rating bar whose rating has been changed. Rating is the current rating, which we'll use below in our code. And from user is true if the rating change was initiated by a user. Lines 28 and 29 is code from our original first app project that logs a message. In this case, we've changed the toString parameter to our rating parameter, and we're now using the float class because the rating is a floating point number. So let's fire up our new app in the emulator, highlight the project, click the debug button. So here's our enhanced app, and we have a rating bar which we can change. And in the debug window, we click on the debug tab and make sure that we've checked the right project, because we want to look in the log file here. And I'm going to expand this out. And as we change the stars, you see we get a new message indicating the rating. And this comes from our log code here. And it's here in the Java code that you would do the work using the rating in your app. And to continue on, lines 31 through 38 define the onCreate options menu, and this code is unchanged from our original app. Now I'd like to make some general suggestions about adding code to your apps. I like to add code in smaller rather than larger chunks. It's normal when adding code that errors are introduced. If you add a large section of code, it can be more difficult to isolate and correct errors than with smaller code segments. For example, in our enhanced app, you could add the implements onRatingBarChange listener before adding any of the code to respond to the rating bar. If you hadn't added the needed imports, this would have introduced errors that you could then correct before adding more code. So for example, if I comment out these imports, you see the error indicators appear. And if I click on the error, it tells me to create the imports. So if I go back and take out the comments, you see the errors disappear. Now I have an error-free app before moving on to adding more code. If your app is already running error-free and you add a code segment, Any error introduced is likely due to the code that you just added. Adding small blocks of code make it easier to back out the code if you aren't able to get it working and want to try another approach. Also, after each addition of code, I'd like to get the app functioning again. Don't let errors accumulate. Multiple errors usually increase the difficulty of debugging. And in addition to letting the compiler check for syntax errors, as we've been doing here, you should run the debugger after your changes to check for execution errors. So, for example, we would save any changes we've made, click the debug button, and the app is started up again. To help with code comprehension, I like to use code comments fairly liberally. Even if you understand some lines of code at the moment, when you return to the code after the passage of time, you may have difficulty understanding it or understanding it quickly. Code comments can also help design your code even before you have actual code to add. Sometimes you'll figure out that a type of function needs to be performed, but you don't yet know how to code it. In that case, go ahead and add a comment using the best description you can, and then fill in the code later. For example, in line 20 of our enhanced app, you might have known or guessed that you needed to set a listener for the rating bar, but didn't know yet how to code it. So you could add the line 20 comment and then fill in later with the code in line 21. In addition to the API demos, there are other resources on the developer's website you can use. For example, on the developer's website, if we search on common tasks and click on this first entry, we get a page with a number of common tasks explained with code samples. And Google is adding new resources to the website all the time. One way to stay up to date on Android development is using Google+ to follow what's happening with Android developers. If you sign up for Google+, you can follow Android developers. And there are lots of posts by the Google team and others on the latest and greatest Android features. That's our lesson on adding code to your Android apps. In the chapters and lessons to follow, we'll look at a number of design and code patterns you can use and adapt to your applications.